Alright, in this video I'm going to cover how I set up the DasMikro V6 Gyro on my K969 rebuild. And I'll go over some of the differences between the V5 and the V6, but I'm mainly going to cover the V6 because I've already done a couple videos on the V5. So if you need more information on the DasMikro V5, you can go back and watch some of those videos I did on the LDRC 1803 and the Jybela 143 scale little RC cars. But I have the V6 mounted right here on my K969, and there's some slight differences between the V5 and V6 that are very important for setting up these gyros on your car. The main difference between the V5 and V6 is that the V5 right here, has that little dial so you can change the gains right here on the gyro, while the V6 does not have a dial, so you have to hook it up to an aftermarket receiver and then change the gains on a dial on your transmitter. So if you have a car with stock electronics that doesn't give you a channel to hook up to, then you cannot use the V6 on it. You can only use like the V5, because this one is where you would be able to change the gains right there. Now the pinout is almost the same as the V5. The back 4 pins are basically the same, but they just took away the connector and they just soldered directly to the board for the four wires in the back instead of having this connector. So it's really the same 3-pin connector hanging off the back and then the 1-pin connector. I just desoldered them because I needed the space, and I just wanted to direct solder my own wires. So they look like this little wire right here, and they came with this little connector. So that was soldered right there on that right where I have the white one. So this would be for your channel 3. If you were going to hook it up to a aftermarket receiver and hook it up to your transmitter, you would hook up that wire to channel 3, and then on channel 3 is where you would change the gains on a little dial on your transmitter. So same thing with the V5 gyro. You can do the same thing where you can hook up this channel to channel 3 and then control it from your remote. But if you don't want to do that, obviously, like I said, you could use the dial right here on the board. Now this is where you would plug in your servo, is the front little connector here, and they actually reverse the pinout between the V5 and V6. So on the V5, the ground would be to the right over here, and then power and then signal, while on this one, and this one comes with a little connector I just desoldered. So there would be a connector here that you plug in your servo to, and it's sideways now instead of going up, and that's what they changed. But you would have it ground to the left, power in the middle, and then signal to the right. So they just reversed those, I guess, because of the way they had to mount the connector when they changed it 90 degrees there. So just keep that in mind. And the reason, like I said, is why I desoldered this connector is because I needed a little bit more low profile there. When I was running my body, it was almost getting close to hitting the windshield on my car. So I just desoldered it, and I'm actually not using the power pin out on that one because these servos on my K969 actually run 5 to 6 volts. And this gyro can take between 3 to 8.4 volts, so basically 1S to 2S. And if you have a car that's running 2S, you're gonna have 8.4 volts running through the gyro if you hook it up right to the main power supply. And then that 8.4 volts will go out to your servo, and then that would actually put 8.4 volts directly into my servo, and that could burn it out. So I can't just run the power directly through the gyro from my 2S battery into the servo. It would basically destroy it. So I actually have a dedicated 5-volt regulator, kind of like this one here, to where I run the 8.4 volts into it, and then it steps it down to 5 volts, and then the 5 volts powers my servo. So you might not have to do this if you use this gyro with like a 9G servo. The 9G servos can handle 2S battery, so you can do like 8 volts into one of these. But when you're using one of these little smaller little 5G servos, they can't handle that much power, so they can only go about 5 to 6 volts. So you need to either run only 1S battery on it, or you have to use a 5-volt regulator to power the servo separately. So just keep that in mind if you're gonna try to put this on a smaller car that has like a 5G servo, that don't just run the power directly through the gyro. If it's 8 volts or higher, it could damage your servo. So the pinout to the receiver is pretty simple. You just basically, these first 3 pins here would go to the channel 1 on your receiver. So this is the same receiver I have on here. I just have it, you know, taken out of the case and then desoldered and everything. So from over here on the right would be ground and then power, and then the yellow wire right there would be channel 1 signal. So that's basically where you would control your steering directly from your servo. So you'd have the 3 wires coming out of your servo, and that would have to feed through the gyro. So it's actually easier to show you on the V5 basically. So you would usually have on these smaller ones, they come with either the JR style connector, or they come with these little 1.5 millimeter pitch connectors, so you can plug it right in. If you don't have that, you either have to cut and solder, or you have to get a adapter that changes this connector down to one of these connectors, and then you plug it in there. And then after you plug the servo into the gyro, you plug this into your receiver, and then that's how the receiver talks through the gyro into the servo, and that's how the gyro works. So yeah, so on here, so channel 1 would be all the way over here, and it would be ground, power, and then signal. So basically, like how you'd usually plug in your servo. Let's see, flip around. So the ground would be to the right, like that. And then that would be how you plug in your servo usually in channel 1 for steering. So it's the same thing with the gyro. You just plug in the gyro into that area, and then you plug in the servo into the gyro, and that's how, you know, it talks, or, you know, it works through the gyro to the servo. And then of course, like I said, this would go to, this little 1 wire would go to channel 3, or any channel really you want to put it on, but usually it's channel 3 to change your gains. And it would go to the signal wire, or the signal line right there on channel 3. So that's where that would go if you were going to hook up channel 3. So I did that on here, but it's hard to see because I got a lot of stuff in the way. But channel 3 is right there. So that little white wire that's coming from here is going to channel 3. So that's how I change the gains. And I'll turn on my transmitter and show you how that works here in a second. So I just wanted to go over, you know, basically how this functions and everything on the car before I go over to my transmitter. So like I said, if you use like a 9G servo, you wouldn't have to give it a different power supply. You could just run the power directly out of your receiver through the gyro, and then the power out of here can go right to the servo. So if it was one of these like 9G servos, it can just handle, you know, whatever voltage you put in there, as long as it's, you know, 8 to 9 volts. I don't think it can go any higher than 9 volts. So you would just hook up all 3 of these to those pins right there. But I can't do that because this little servo only does 5 volts. So that's the basic setup on the car on how you would hook up this V6 gyro, and like I said, same with the V5, basically the same thing. So let me turn on my transmitter here. Let me plug in the car too, and then I can give you an idea what's going on. Okay. So you can see the gyro's on. It's really shaky because my hands are shaky, but if I stay calm, it's much more stable. But if you shake and stuff, you can see how easy it is for that gyro to pick everything up. And it also depends on how high you put the gains. So there's either slow return or there's fast return when you're messing with the gains. So if you were using the V5, if you rotate it clockwise that way with this little dial, so if you went clockwise that way, it would be slow return, and if you went counterclockwise this way, it would be fast return. And usually I do slow return, but you might like either one depending on how you like to drift. So test them both out and see what you like. But that's the difference between the two. So if I was gonna go to the channel 3 dial here, I can show you, like right now, I might have my dial a little high. I think it accidentally got knocked. But usually I have it around in the 60 to 65% range. So you can see this little dial right here. This is what's controlling it. So if I go clockwise, it'll bring it over to the right all the way to 100% there, then back to center where it's 0. And then if I go left, you know, counterclockwise, it'll show negative, you know, 0 to a negative 100. And that would be for fast return. So if I went back this way, this would be for slow return. And usually I have it in the 60s to 70s. And with this one, I can actually get into the 70s or 80s where it's not giving me crazy shakes or wobbles when I'm driving. I can actually get it up to the 80 like 70, 80% without any issues on this car. Because with like, say my LDRC with the stock electronics barely lets me out to 30%. When I change out the electronics, I'm hoping to get to 50, 60%. But with this car, I can actually get up into 70, 80% no problem when I'm driving. So the difference between having it like around 60% to 70%, let's see, if I have it in the 70s, I actually will have much smoother, like bigger drifting arches and stuff, like in circles. It's a little bit more controlled to where it's like, it really helps, you know, take over for you. But if I want to do like really tight drifts in like a really small area, like around like a tiny cone, I would actually drop it down into the 60s. So around 60 to 65, and then I can drift in like one very tight little circle. It's a little bit harder to drive though, because it's slightly unstable in a way where it's not really smooth when you have it down that low. Or I mean, I guess, yeah, for this car, 60% is almost kind of low. So when I have it closer to 70, 80%, it'll give me much, you know, smoother, you know, bigger drifts. And like I said, if I have it down in the 60s or lower, it'll actually give me really tight, less smooth drifts, but I can do really tight, you know, like donuts and stuff. So it really depends on what style of driving you're gonna do. So sometimes I'll keep it low in the 60s if I wanna do really tight, you know, little circles. And then if I wanna do a little bit smoother, bigger drifts, I will bump it up into the 70s. And it's really easy to change just right here on the dial. That's because I have it hooked up on, you know, like I said, channel 3 right there. And that's all you have to do to really set these up. And it's really sensitive when it comes to feeling vibrations. So just remember that when you're mounting one of these, is that vibrations will get into the gyro, and the less vibrations that get into the gyro, the better it'll perform. So if you have it like mounted to like a really hard surface or around something that's really shaky or bouncy, it could get into the gyro and it actually could mess up the way the car drifts. So try to keep it soft mounted as much as you can with like multiple layers of double-sided tape or any other kind of material to soft mount it, or to, you know, for anti-vibration, so like foam or whatever. Just keep that in mind. You don't really want to, you know, put it on a flat hard surface or too close to the ground or anywhere near the wheels or any bumpy surfaces, you know, bumpy areas where you're going to get a lot of shakiness going. Just try to avoid that. Usually I like to mount these, you know, closer to the middle or center, or, you know, somewhere in the middle of the car. It doesn't matter if you have it off to the side or the front or back, really. The gyro will still read all the axes the same. So it's not going to change the way it actually performs where you mount it. It just depends on how many vibrations are getting into it that'll affect its performance. So just keep that in mind. So this is actually slow return. It looks really fast, to be honest, and kind of jittery because my hands are shaky. But let's see how it looks when I go to fast return. I mean, it's hard to tell the difference, but this is actually much faster at returning back to center. Surprisingly, because it already looks fast on slow. But I go back this way. Yeah, so I mean, basically that's it. It just shows you how it performs. And that's really all there is to it, to hooking up one of these little V6 gyros to any of your cars. Just remember, if you have like stock electronics on, say, like one of these little cars where you don't have a transmitter that has a little dial, they are coming out with a new version though that has a built-in gyro, but this is the original one with no gyro in it. Yeah, there's no way I can hook up to a channel 3 on this transmitter to be able to control the gains off of a little dial on this original version. So if you hooked it up to the stock electronics, you have to run like the V5 version. You can't run the V6, it just wouldn't work. It would, you can't turn the gain up or down, so it just would, as soon as you plug it in, you just see nothing happening. You think it's broken, but it's not. It's just, you can't change the gains. Same with the LDRC, like original cars, like the stock electronics on here are the same thing, to where if you hook up the V6 to the stock electronics, that doesn't have you know, a dial, or there's no channel 3 on here to hook up to do it, so you can't use it on here. That's why you have to use a V5 gyro. So I know some people out there in the beginning bought the V6s and didn't realize that you can't use them with these cars because there's no way of controlling them off the stock electronics. And then the only way to do it is you have to hook up your own receiver, and then you could actually use it. So just keep that in mind before you purchase one of these, so you know, you don't mess that up and then you can't even drift it because there's no way of actually, you know, changing the gains on the gyro. I almost forgot to tell you how to set the endpoints or reverse the gyro. It's the same exact setup as the DasMikro V5 version. So what you have to do is when you power on the car, well, first you keep your radio powered on, then you hold the button, and then you power on the car, and then you wait for the little LED here to flash really fast. Once it stops flashing really fast, you let go of the button, and then it should go into a slow blinking mode, and that's actually the setup mode. And then you would take your controller while setting down the car, and you would actually go left first, hold it for a few seconds, wait till the wheels recenter themselves, and then after they recenter, hold right second, and then wait a few seconds, and then the wheels will go back to center on their own. And then that's all you do, and then you'll see the little light on here goes solid, and that means it's back out of setup mode, and it's set the endpoints of the steering left and right, so it knows how far the servo can go. So yeah, if you need more of like an in-depth detail on how to do that, just go back and watch one of my other videos about the DasMikro V5 Gyro. I've done this so many times now in all those videos. It just takes, you know, so much time to just keep showing the same thing over and over again. So you can just go back and watch one of those videos on how to set it up. It's the same thing, it's really easy. And then when it comes to reversing the gyro, say your gyro is already like backwards, it wasn't actually counter steering correctly, then going left first and then right second should fix it to where it should be normal. If not, if for any reason you need to reverse it from what should be normal to reverse, then go right first and then left second, and then that should reverse it from whatever direction it's going. So it should change it. So it's kind of weird. If you go to the link in my description to the V5 Gyro, it should give a good description on how to set up the endpoints and everything on there, you know, written out. But otherwise, just go back to one of my other videos on either the 143 scale little RC car that I did a video on with this gyro, or even my LDRC 1803, the how to install it, or you know, part 1 and part 2, I go over it in those videos as well. So that's just something I wanted to mention before I stop this video, because I almost forgot to tell you how to set the endpoints. But I've just done it so many times now, it's kind of pointless to do it in real time, and I don't want to mess with this because it's already set, and I don't want to do it again. I don't want to mess anything up. It shouldn't mess anything up, but you know, I'd rather just keep it the way it is without like doing it again. So, but yeah, that's about it for setting up the DasMikro V6 Gyro. I'll be doing some more videos on the K969 and the electronics, like the receiver and the FuriTech Momentum ESC on here. I'll do some videos on those, as well as some other videos on the 143 scale little RC cars, and then my LDRC 1803. I'll have more videos coming out with that too. So once again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.